For the last week, I've been working hard on my very first commercial game. But before we get into my game, I've also been working with another game developer on his commercial project. So for the past month, I've been secretly working on this other game called Viking Survival, but to a much lesser degree. I'm acting as a sort of coding advisor, just giving suggestions to improve the codebase, and I have also contributed a little bit of direct coding to the project. But that's not everything I've been up to. I have a friend that I have been wanting to collaborate on a project with for a long time, and I thought my first commercial game would be the perfect opportunity for us to work together. But there's one huge problem. She has never worked on a game before. I think the best way to learn anything is by getting your hands dirty, and I wanted to learn sound implementation using Wwise and Fmod. I set out on my goal to learn Fmod on my Arrows Nexus game, but after I finished that project, I realized that my knowledge of Wwise wasn't as strong as Fmod, even though I had been using Wwise a lot longer. So I started a small project with my sound designer friend so we could both learn how to better implement Wwise into game projects. And we did it! This is the completed project, and this project was supposed to end here. But I showed it to my brother and he fell in love with it. My brother had always been really supportive of my game development, so I decided this project would become my first commercial game and to dedicate it to him. There's an issue though. I am not that well versed in 3D, and I didn't want to only use store-bought assets. I wanted to make some custom 3D assets for this game, and serendipity decided to give me a visit. I met this other game developer on a Discord server saying that he had 3D knowledge but wasn't that strong at coding. So he proposed a skill exchange where he teaches me 3D and I teach him programming. I could not believe my luck, so I jumped at this chance, and I found out that he was already developing his first commercial project even though he just started to learn to code. I was so impressed with this project, and I was surprised to find out that he had only been programming for a few months. He had created his own 3D models and assets, but still wanted more items, so he started me off with making a table and campfire, and then disaster struck. I don't want to go too deep into it. I made a couple of videos about it already, but I had to redo a lot of work in an old Game Jam game I had worked on called Goetia. By the way, that game is now back online, so check it out if you like card games. And it was around this time that my web developer friend was coming back from visiting her family overseas. We had been talking about working together for a long time. We met in a coding bootcamp where we paired together on our final project, and she did so well. She got us out of a lot of programming binds, so even though she's not familiar with game development, I know she's going to be a huge asset to have on the project. But I hadn't even started working on the project yet. All these other things were happening around me, and I realized that I had been stalled on my game for a while. So I finished working on Goetia, and I created a new project and started working on my game. The working title is Tower Quest. The idea for the game has morphed from a tower defense game to more of an RPG where you go around destroying towers set up by this evil wizard. I haven't been focusing too much on the story yet, but the main idea is that you're trying to save the world with your grandpa as your sort of Merlin figure. You progress through the game, unlocking different abilities by exploring the world and defeating these towers. And for the past week, I've been working on getting the towers and enemies set up. I know this doesn't seem like a lot of work, but I have been hyper focusing on trying to make everything as expandable as possible. So in the future, adding new enemies is going to be as simple as adjusting a few drop downs. The first few days I worked really hard on getting this one little baby dragon set up while keeping that expandability in mind. And after a couple of days, I got this little guy working pretty well. If you get within a certain distance, he'll notice you and start chasing you. And I even got his melee attack working. Then my friend came back from her trip and she started to go through the Unity course available on my channel. If you're interested in making games, go check it out. And at the same time, Viking Survivor was starting to get to a more playable state, and the developer was starting to integrate code so it could interact with Steam. While everyone started working on their own stuff, I was testing to see how easy it was to make a new character, but after half a day, I had another enemy working. To make the second enemy was such an easy process, and I feel pretty confident that future enemies will only get easier and easier as I begin to add more varieties of enemy archetypes. And as I began to start working on the tower, my friend messaged messaged me saying that she had finished going through the entire course. So I took a brief pause and we started working together on creating her version of the player movement code. I was really impressed with her progress. She caught on to game concepts quickly, so I gave her the challenge of adding in jumping. Jumping in games is probably the most challenging thing to implement in terms of simple movement because there are so many conditions that have to be met in order to get it working. I completely forgot about that before I gave her the challenge, but to my surprise, the next day she had jumping working. Basically, we had a quick session about how colliders work and inheritance, and we had a pretty solid jumping and health mechanic complete by the end of the day. After that, I jumped back to my code and I started working on the code for the tower. To be honest, this is probably the worst piece of programming in the game so far, but it's at least working. Not super well, but I was really tired at the time and I wasn't really thinking about how everything would interact with each other. The good news is that I already have an idea of how to make this better and a new mechanic that will make fighting towers worth doing beyond just story reasons, but I haven't started working on it yet, so I can't really talk too much about it. More good news is that Viking Survival is getting closer and closer to release, and we're at the stage where we're going to start looking for playtesters. If you're interested in playtesting a third-person top-down arena game where you can throw magical axes at orcs, join the server and we'd love to get your feedback. As far as Tower Quest goes, I'm really excited to continue working on this game, and the plan is for next week to make my very first 3D character and hopefully get some animations working for him. If you're interested in following the progress of Tower Quest, subscribe to the channel and I'll catch you next time.